I pointed out the other day, and I want to emphasize it now, these debates going on about budgets, deficits, the debt, they're debates that affect your life. It's not about just a battle between parties. It's not just a Washington game. It is what affects you directly in a big way. When you have public sector unions marching on their capitals or shutting down public schools, that's because they want more of your money. That is what's going on in Wisconsin, which I'll get to later. If your neighborhood's anything like mine, and I'm sure it is very much like mine, if not even worse off, you have a lot of homes for sale. People are trying to sell their homes before it's too late, before they're underwater. They've lost their equity, or they've lost their jobs, and they need to get out, and they can't get out. Meanwhile, they continue to be taxed at higher and higher rates by their local governments to pay for public sector unions. And if your county's anything like mine, 70% of my tax bill, 78%, something like that, goes to the school system. And the vast majority of that goes to union members. And by the way, there's a lot of good public school teachers. The problem is there's a lot of bad public school teachers too, and we're not allowed to sort out the difference. And furthermore, I'll give you an example. I live in Loudoun County, Virginia. It always upsets my parents when I say where I live. Well, I'm not giving out any more information. In the local papers here, we have a superintendent who earns about $250,000 a year before we get to his pension and health care. Been around 18 years. Keeps building schools. He won't stop. And they're small schools, not big schools. So the capital expense plus the administrative fixed costs and the utilities and so forth are higher than they would normally be. His budget will increase 6.6% this year, non-construction. On construction, he has $500 million of proposals for new schools. I'm looking around thinking to myself, does this man live in the real world? The answer is no, he doesn't live in the real world. All they do is pass a law at the Board of Supervisors and impose a tax, and if you don't pay it, you lose your home. 6.6% increase. Well, we're told there hasn't been a salary increase for the teachers in 3 years. That's a lie. A flat-out lie. I'm an old school board member years and years ago when I was in law school, 19, 20 years old, outside of Philadelphia. I know how this works. You get a cost of living increase. That's what they've frozen. You get an increase because you exist each year, seniority, and if you get additional credits toward a higher degree, not only, not only is that paid for, but when you accomplish those, secure those credits, pass those classes, you get another increase. And on top of that, some school districts have bonus systems, so there's 4 possibilities. All of you ought to look into it with your own local school systems. When they say, well, we haven't had a cost of living increase, well, how does the budget keep going up for salaries? That's how. But this guy, the superintendent, I forget what his name is, doesn't matter. We've cut to the bone, he keeps saying, and yet they keep having new technology they're paying for, more schools he wants to pay for, salary increases, and I thought to myself, this man isn't even addressing the unfunded liabilities for health care and pensions in Loudoun County school system. There's not a word in the local newspapers about it. What is the exposure to the taxpayers for these unfunded liabilities, these benefits? And why isn't anybody talking about it? They keep going along like there's always going to be tomorrow. There's not always going to be tomorrow. At some point, something has to give. At some point, something has to give. So this is not a battle between a board of supervisors and a school board or a superintendent and the chairman of the board of supervisors. This is a battle that you, ladies and gentlemen, are involved in because it affects you directly, whether it's a school system or local government, whether it's the state, whether it's the federal government. My point is, the media keep trying to report what's going on in Washington, D.C. as Obama versus the Republican leadership. Who's going to blink? This affects you. This affects whether you get to stay in your home. This affects your assets. It affects your income. They're fighting over you. Now, if you think you're undertaxed, in some of your cases, if you want to see the mortgage deduction go away, if you think your employer can handle several more tax increases and still give you a salary increase or still keep you as an employee, then support the Democrats. If you think the government's too big, that the debt is getting massive, that this $1.65 trillion deficit predicted just for this year alone, this fiscal year, is too much, and that we can't have 15 too massive tax increases in the Obama budget, then vote Republican. But however you vote, you need to understand these are battles over your future and the future for your children. These are battles over your right to own a home based on how they decide to regulate you and tax you. On your right to keep 10% more or 10% less of what you earn every day. This goes to who we are. Now, every now and then I like to dig into history, don't I? When we're talking about budgets and spending and taxes and private property, we're talking about something that is foundational. James Madison, 1792. Property. The word property. This is crucial. He said, this term in its particular application means that dominion which one man claims and exercises over the external things of the world in exclusion of every other individual. In its larger and juster meaning, it embraces everything to which a man may attach a value and have a right, and which leaves to everyone else the like advantage. In the former sense, a man's land or merchandise or money is called his property. In the latter sense, a man has a property in his opinions and the free communication of them. He has a property of peculiar value in his religious opinions and in the profession and practice dictated by them. He has a property very dear to him in the safety and liberty of his person. He has an equal property in the free use of his facilities and free faculties and free choice of the objects on which to employ them. In a word, as a man is said to have a right to his property, he may be equally said to have a property in his rights. And it goes on. Declaration of Independence, unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is, the pursuit of things that motivate you, that make you happy, and that includes acquiring and possessing and maintaining property. See, property is more than a physical asset. It's more than a bank account. Property represents how you spend a significant portion of your life, a significant portion of your day, working to acquire assets, whatever kind of assets, whether you use your brain or your hands or both. Property is the manifestation of your free will, and it's finite. One day you'll be dead, so you only have so much time on this earth, and much of that time is spent working. Follow me? So when a president of the United States says, you over there, I want more of your property, what he is saying is, you over there, you are going to work more for me and my agenda and my programs and my priorities because I say you will, whether you like it or not. Remember, money, physical property is nothing more than the manifestation of your labor. So when they say you're going to pay 10% more, that means they own 10% more of your life. When teachers demand more and more pensions and health care and higher salaries, you are going to pay for it with your time, your life. When the President of the United States says, I'm going to spend 1.3 whatever trillion and we cannot cut it, he's saying, I want more of the time you spend on this earth, God's earth. I want to take more of that time out of your life, whether you like it or not. You understand what I'm saying? Madison would understand what I'm saying. John Locke would understand what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying. Put aside the materialism. Put aside the currency. Think about what I'm saying. One step deeper than you're used to from people talking to you day in and day out with the superficial news accounts. When they say somebody's going to go without home heating oil, somebody's going to go without this, somebody's going to go without that, they are saying to those of you who work, you are going to work more for the government, and we in the government are going to decide what to do with your labor. Let's say you pay 25% of what you earn to the federal government. That means you're working 25% of the time for the federal government. 1/4 of your workday for the federal government. If you pay 40% or 36.9 and you lose some deductions as it goes up, let's just round it off 40%. That means you're spending almost half your day working for the federal government. And the federal government takes your money, that is your labor, and gives it to somebody else. They give a piece of your life to somebody else, meaning you're working for somebody else you don't even know. You don't even know if they deserve it. Or it could be that, in this case, with this president and the Democrat Party as it's formed today, it could mean they want to take some of your labor and the fruits of your labor and give it to a political group or a constituent group that supports them. That is why it is crucial that the federal government comply and operate within the Constitution of the United States. Or these politicians and bureaucrats have an absolute demand on your liberty, on your labor. Because where does it end? Where do you draw the line? How does it stop? Answer, it doesn't. For years behind this microphone, 7.5 years, I've asked a question which I consider the key question that the liberals can never answer. And it is this: having essentially discarded the governmental limits for the central government in our Constitution, what are the limits to your agenda? What are the limits to your philosophy of redistributing wealth, of taxation, of spending, if we don't comply with the Constitution? They have no answer. You want to know why? There are no limits. Liberals, you need to think this through. Statists, you are enslaving yourselves and all the rest of us to the federal government. Most of you don't even know what you're doing. But that is what you're doing. And worse than that, Paul Ryan was on this show earlier in the week, and he made it clear that the quote-unquote middle class, whatever that is, but the bulk of the people in this country, when your kids are our age, between 35 and 55, not all of you, obviously, but I'm talking about the middle-aged, middle class, they're going to be paying at least 66% of every dollar they earn to the federal government. Before we get to the state and local governments, we are enslaving our own children to a future that is dark. That's why this budget battle is not just about Obama and Republican leaders. It's about us. We'll be right back. Now, contrast that with what I have in my hands, which is the Communist Manifesto. And the Communist Manifesto wants to abolish property rights. And they argue, Marx and Engels, for abolishing property rights because they want everybody to live in essentially nirvana, you see. Isn't this what the liberals really tell us? We want everybody to live in nirvana. We'll be right back.